Namo Amida Butsu. 32. Admonitions for the attainment of birth in the Pure Land. 1. It is commendable for one to recite Nembutsu 60,000 times as a daily practice. 10 repetitions, or even a single utterance of Nembutsu will assure birth in the Pure Land, if one does not harbor doubts about the essential vow of Amida Buddha. However, reciting large numbers of Nembutsu leads one to the high category of birth in the Pure Land. Master Fachow stated, one who is born in the high category of birth will see the Lord of Compassion, Amida Buddha, on the lotus platform in the Pure Land. The accomplishment of birth in the Pure Land in this state is due to the merit of a multitude of Nembutsu recitations. 2. People say that the attainment of birth in the Pure Land is due to the residue of one's virtuous deeds performed in previous existence. This is correct. What one receives in this fleeting world may turn out favorable or unfavorable depending upon the virtue and vice committed in one's previous state of existence. Sacred texts teach that the crucial matter of birth in the Pure Land presupposes one's residual virtues. Nevertheless, birth in the Pure Land through Nembutsu does not require one to have residual virtuous deeds. According to the Meditation Sutra, even the wicked who murder their own father or mother, or who drew the blood of a Buddha, will still achieve birth in the Pure Land through the 10 repetitions of Nembutsu at the time of death. The good, who have residual virtuous karma without special instruction, are afraid of committing non-virtues and strive for the way of a Buddha. They never commit the 5 grave offenses. On the other hand, the wicked, who have committed the 5 grave offenses, will still achieve birth in the Pure Land by repeating Nembutsu 10 times, even though they have no residual virtues. The Meditation Sutra states, if individuals are able to hear the 6 Chinese characters Namo Amitofo, the flaming chariot which carries the wretched to hell will naturally disappear, and Amida Buddha will come to welcome them on the lotus platform, even if they have repeated various unvirtuous karma. In order to attain birth in the Pure Land of ultimate bliss, a mortal heavily burdened with grave karmic wrongs has no means of deliverance except recitation of the name of Amida Buddha. One with no karmic cause for being born in the Pure Land due to the obstruction of grave karmic negativity will attain birth in the Pure Land if he entrusts himself to the power of Amida Buddha's essential vow. This means 1. Upon hearing the name of Amida Buddha, which consists of the 6 Chinese characters, the flaming chariot departs as a matter of course, and Amida Buddha appears on the lotus pedestal to welcome a Nembutsu devotee, even if he has committed the 5 grave offenses. 2. A wicked one with grave negative karma normally has no chance to attain birth in the Pure Land, but such a wicked one still achieves birth in the Pure Land by chanting the name of Amida Buddha. And 3. The total reliance on the power of the essential vow makes birth in the Pure Land possible, even when one has no means to achieve birth in the Pure Land because of one's grave karmic wrongs. Hence, Nembutsu is dependable. Master Shanto commented, Amida Buddha realized Buddhahood in order to welcome sentient beings who have sunk to the bottom of the river of the transmigration of the 6 delusive worlds of samsara, and have remained there for countless eons up to the present time, with no karmic condition for escape from the 6 delusive worlds. Here the so-called sentient beings who have sunk to the bottom of the river of transmigration are the common mortals of the defiled world. They are compared to beings who dwell permanently on the floor of the Ganges River, with bodies too big and long to move. Kobo Daishi 774-835 interpreted the 2 Chinese letters Fan Fu, ordinary mortals, as drunk. It is true that the heart of a common man cannot distinguish between right and wrong, just like a person who is distracted and intoxicated. 100 worldly passions well up within his heart immediately, and he is easily confused about good and evil. Eventually, he is unable to accomplish any practice through his own power. In order to detach from the delusive worlds of transmigration, to enter the path leading to Buddhahood, and to accomplish Buddhahood, one must awaken the heart of enlightenment, renounce all worldly passions, and undergo religious austerities for countless eons. However, common mortals in the non-virtuous world of the five defilements will continue to transmigrate in the six delusive worlds while repeating the four modes of birth due to their lack of power to establish and practice a vow successfully. Having seen and lamented on this, Tathagata Amida, when he was called Bodhisattva Dharmakara in the distant past, underwent penance for an extraordinary large number of eons, which would be impossible for us to endure. He accumulated various merits and finally realized Buddhahood as Amida Buddha. He was endowed with the merits of the internal realization, such as the 4 kinds of wisdom, the 3 phases of the body, the 10 powers of wisdom, and the 4 forms of fearlessness, as well as the merits of his external virtues, such as the special physical attributes, the ray of light, the preaching of the Dharma, and the benefit to other people. All these virtues are embodied in the 3 letters of Amida. Master Shanta therefore stated, Amida Buddha vowed that those who call his name 10 times or just once will definitely be welcomed, and those who call his name 10 times or just once will definitely be welcomed, and that he will not realize enlightenment if they are not born in the Pure Land. Amida Buddha did attain Buddhahood and presently resides in the Pure Land. Sentient beings who recite his name should not entertain doubts about their certain attainment of birth in the Pure Land. One who firmly believes in the teaching of birth in the Pure Land through Nembutsu and who diligently recites Nembutsu without doubts is referred to as one who has faith in the power other than self. There are similar concepts in our society. For instance, it is impossible for an individual whose legs are weak and whose back is bent to go a long distance using his own efforts. Knowing this, he rides a boat or some vehicle to reach his destination. This is much easier. This is not done by using his own power, but by using the power of a boat or vehicle, that is, by a power other than self. Even a vehicle made by ignorant people with perverted hearts in the defiled world possesses such power. How much clearer is it that one can cross the delusive ocean of samsara in the boat or raft of the essential vow made by Amida Buddha, who practiced virtue for 5 eons? One must not harbor any doubts about this. Likewise, there exist magical powers in medicinal herbs to cure an illness, in a magnet to attract iron, in musk to emit a fragrance, and in the horn of a rhinoceros to repel water. Although herbs are merely vegetation without hearts, and animals never awaken spiritual aspiration, they have magical powers within. The power of the teachings of Buddha Sakyamuni must be even more wondrous. Each utterance of Nembutsu has the power to nullify negative karma accumulated for 8 billion eons in the delusive worlds of transmigration. You should bear in mind that Amida Buddha has the power to welcome everyone, including those with grave karmic negativity, and that birth in the Pure Land will be assured to everyone who recites Nembutsu, whether or not they have residual virtues and regardless of the gravity of their non-virtues. Amida Buddha does not discriminate between one who observes the precepts and one who violates them, nor does he discriminate between the poor and the wealthy, and pays no regard to social class. His power changes the karmic nature of man through Nembutsu like a stone or tile transformed into gold. He also promised that he would come to welcome all Nembutsu devotees without exception. In the liturgy for the rite of the 5-fold rhythmic chanting of Nianfo, Master Fachat thus relates, when Amida Buddha was in the state of a bodhisattva, he made the universal vow for saving mortals, saying, I will come to welcome all those who listen to and meditate on my name. I will not discriminate between the poor and the rich, the ignorant and the educated. I will not choose only the learned observers of the precepts or the errant in breach of the precepts. If they but turn their meritorious hearts toward birth in the Pure Land and recite my name, I will welcome them to the Pure Land of ultimate bliss, like broken tiles and pebbles turned into gold. Merely counting a string of prayer beads without vocalizing Nembutsu as being indolent. Master Shantao interpreted the intimate relationship, one of the three kinds of karmic relationships between Amida and a Nembutsu devotee as follows. When sentient beings worship Amida Buddha, he sees them. When they recite the name of Amida Buddha, he listens to them. When they are mindful of Amida Buddha, he is also mindful of them. Therefore, the three categories of acts exercised by both Amida Buddha and the Nembutsu devotee unite into one. Since this relationship between Amida Buddha and a Nembutsu devotee is like that between parents and their children, it is called the intimate karmic relationship. In the same way, when a Nembutsu devotee holds a string of prayer beads in his hand, Amida Buddha sees him. When he wishes to recite Nembutsu, Amida Buddha is also mindful of that desire. Thus, we must strive to be seen and to be within the awareness of Amida Buddha in order to benefit from his benevolence. To accomplish this relationship, a practitioner must recite Nembutsu continually in order to bring harmony between Amida Buddha and the three categories of acts of a Nembutsu practitioner. The three categories are physical, verbal, and mental acts. The vocalization of Nembutsu is significant because the recitation of Nembutsu is in accordance with the essential vow. If one can hear one's own recitation, that suffices as reciting Nembutsu in an audible voice. It is said that Nembutsu in an audible voice is practiced while worshipping a great Buddha, and that being mindful of Amida Buddha is also a part of Nembutsu. Both the recitation and mindfulness become the karmic causes for birth in the Pure Land. 3. It is respectable to recite Nembutsu without saying something else. To think that exchanging a word during the recitation has less merit is a misunderstanding. For instance, Nembutsu can be compared to gold. The bright color of gold improves even after burning in fire and does not fade in the water. In the same way, Nembutsu neither becomes defiled by the illusory thought that arises in a devotee's heart during practice, nor loses its merit by exchanging a word during practice. Knowing this, you should strive to increase the number of Nembutsu without committing to other things. But if you forget these instructions and accidentally verbalize other things during practice, don't think, "What a shameful thing I have done. The Nembutsu I performed is in vain." Do not allow yourself to think this way. No matter how one recites Nembutsu, the recitation definitely becomes the cause for birth in the Pure Land. 4. There is no reference to 1,000,000 recitations of Nembutsu in the essential vow of Amida Buddha. It is taught in the smaller sutra that one who recites Nembutsu 1 day through 7 days will be born in the Pure Land. Accordingly, one should strive for the 7-day repetition of Nembutsu. The senior master Chatsai determined 7 days to be the requisite length of time for 1,000,000 recitations of Nembutsu. So ideally, one practices 1,000,000 recitations in 7 days. If this is impossible, however, one may take 8 days or 9 days. This should not be construed to mean that birth in the Pure Land is impossible if one does not achieve 1,000,000 recitations of Nembutsu. Birth in the Pure Land is still possible through just a single utterance or 10 repetitions of Nembutsu. Out of the elation experienced from the knowledge that birth in the Pure Land is possible with 1 or 10 Nembutsu grows the joy at the merit of the recitation of 1,000,000 recitations of Nembutsu. 5. I would like to mention the idea that a memorial service for the departed actually brings the 7 portions of merit to the observer and only 1 portion to the departed, as it is generally taught. It is right that people observe a service for themselves before they die. Even if there is someone who will perform this service for you, bear these things in mind. Without depending upon him, devote yourself to practicing Nembutsu. Strive to attain birth in the Pure Land speedily, and be endowed with the 3 and 5 transcendent faculties. Save all the sentient beings transmigrating through the 4 modes of birth and the 6 delusive worlds. Find out the world where your parents, teachers, and elders live, and welcome them to the Pure Land of ultimate bliss. You should also dedicate the merit of your daily Nembutsu to their birth in the Pure Land. If you dedicate the merit of Nembutsu to the departed, Amida Buddha will emit rays of light over the 3 lower realms of hell, starving spirits and animals. The deceased who are suffering in the 3 lower realms will be free from their pain, and emancipation will come to pass when their lives in those worlds come to an end. The larger sutra states, if those who suffer indescribable pain in the 3 lower realms see this light, they will gain relief, pain will be eliminated, and when their lives in those worlds come to an end, they will realize deliverance. 6. It is lamentable to hear one say, I believe in the essential vow of Amida Buddha and long for birth in the Pure Land, yet even knowing that unshakable faith is in Amida Buddha through Nembutsu leads to the certain attainment of Amida Buddha, a deep aspiration for birth in the Pure Land does not arise morning and evening in my heart. One who has heard of the teaching of the Pure Land Gate, but acts like one who has not heard, is one who has escaped from the 3 lower realms, and received life as a human being, but is still ensnared by unwholesome karma. This is also taught in the Sutra of Universal Enlightenment. One who does not aspire for birth in the Pure Land has scant desire to forsake this world of suffering. To illustrate, it is as if someone kindly offers a boat to a person who has no intention of going down to the western provinces from the capital. Although the person does not think the boat unseaworthy, he feels no special gratitude for the offer simply because he has no need of the boat. On the contrary, if a person who has been bound in his enemy's castle barely escapes and flees down the road, only to find a wide river or ocean standing in his way, his heart will be unable to contain his great joy, if his parents had prepared a boat in order to save him. Similarly, we have been firmly fettered by the enemy of worldly passions, such as greed and anger, and have transmigrated in the cage of the delusive 3 realms. Upon seeing this, Amida Buddha, with deep sympathy like a compassionate mother, cuts our ties of transmigration with the sharp sword of his name, sets the cherished boat of the essential vow afloat on the waves of his name, afloat on the waves of the ocean of anguish, and leads us to the shore of the Pure Land. Upon reflection of this, our joy becomes too much for words. We can wring the tears of joy out of our sleeves, and our heart is overwhelmed in adoration of Amida Buddha. If I speak of this, one should feel so grateful that one's hair stands on end. But it is the case that some may instead ignore this without consideration. This is what people are like. This is what people are like. People naturally know how to commit a karmic wrong without having been taught. This is because they have transmigrated in the 6 delusive worlds from beginningless time to the present. In each instance, their appearance have changed, but their nature remains unchanged. They have performed various non-virtuous actions repeatedly, and are now easily accustomed to committing karmic defilements. They have heard of the teaching of birth in the Pure Land through Nembutsu for the very first time in this life. Therefore, it may be natural that they cannot believe in the teaching of Nembutsu in such a short period of time. Moreover, hearts may be categorized into 2 types: the heart for the instantaneous realization of enlightenment and the heart for the gradual realization of enlightenment. The former attains deliverance quickly after listening to the Dharma, and the latter slowly. For instance, when visiting a Shinto shrine or Buddhist temple, one who is fleet of foot arrives there in a few hours, while another who trudges slowly may take more than a day. In any event, those who have the intention to visit will reach there eventually. In the same manner, if one aspires to birth in the Pure Land, faith in one's birth in the Pure Land through Nembutsu will deepen with the passage of time. 7. Someone says, birth in the Pure Land will be unattainable for one who practices Nembutsu daily unless one meets a virtuous teacher in one's last moments. It will also be hard to achieve birth in the Pure Land for one whose heart is disturbed by a severe illness. However, according to Master Shandao, Amida Buddha, together with the host of celestial beings, will welcome any Nembutsu devotee who desires birth in the Pure Land at his time of death, whether he recites Nembutsu many times or just a few. Amida Buddha will welcome those who habitually rely on the power of the essential vow and practice Nembutsu even without meeting a virtuous teacher at the time of death. The attainment of birth in the Pure Land through the helping power of a virtuous teacher applies to people in the 3 grades of the low category, as described in the Meditation Sutra. People in the low category, in particular, do not perform daily Nembutsu, have no desire for birth in the Pure Land, and have committed the 5 grave offenses. They can still attain birth in the Pure Land. However, through meeting with a virtuous teacher for the first time on their deathbed, hearing the teaching of Nembutsu, and reciting Nembutsu 10 times. Conversely, those who always rely upon the power of the essential vow and strive to practice the recitation of the name of Amida Buddha, who contemplated the deliverance of all sentient beings for an enormously long period, their desire for birth in the Pure Land will certainly be welcomed by Amida Buddha without the help of a virtuous teacher. It is desirable for one to pray for a respite if one becomes ill during life's final moments. Nevertheless, even one who dies without an illness partakes in the great agonies of death. The severe torment of illness attacks one on the deathbed from the 80,000 gates of the innumerable dust of suffering. It is as if one were slashed with hundreds and thousands of spears and swords. As a result, even though one has eyes, it is as though one has no eyes and is unable to see a thing. One's tongue becomes so hardened, one cannot speak a single word. Since this distress is referred to as the suffering of death, one of the 8 kinds of suffering, even a Nembutsu devotee who believes in the essential vow and desires birth in the Pure Land is unable to escape from this agony. Even with pain and fainting in agony at the time of death, the practitioner severely abides in the rightly settled state of mind for birth in the Pure Land, due to the compassionate power of Amida Buddha, and truly realizes this birth. The moment of death is no longer than the time it takes to cut a hair, and a common mortal cannot predict that moment. Only Amida Buddha and a dying Nembutsu devotee appreciate it within their hearts. In addition, the 3 kinds of attachment arise within a person during his final moments. Following this, an unwholesome condition disturbs his heart, and eventually he loses the rightly settled state of mind for birth in the Pure Land. It is impossible to remove the 3 kinds of attachment by means of the helping power of a virtuous teacher. Only the compassionate power of Amida Buddha is able to eradicate them. Mr. Shento stated, at the time of death, Amida Buddha himself arrives to welcome the Nembutsu devotee, so that the various karmic negativities that tie one to this delusive world cannot be an obstacle to birth in the Pure Land. His words are indeed dependable. One who seeks birth in the Pure Land in the life to come, say that Amida Buddha will come to welcome us when we abide in the rightly settled state of mind for birth in the Pure Land, and recite Nembutsu. However, the smaller sutra states, Amida Buddha, accompanied by his assembly of holy beings, appears before an Nembutsu devotee when his life is almost at an end. With his mind free from distraction, he will attain birth in the Pure Land of ultimate bliss. In other words, Amida Buddha, together with his celestial attendants, appears before a Nembutsu devotee during his final moments. After seeing his arrival, the heart of the devotee becomes composed, and he eventually attains birth in the Pure Land. This should be known. Accordingly, if you have a light illness, have time to pray, and are meeting with a virtuous teacher at the time of death, utter Nembutsu even once while you are healthy. Then resolve to meet Amida Buddha during your final moments, to be free from the 3 kinds of attachment, to abide in the rightly settled state of mind for birth in the Pure Land, and to be born in the Pure Land. This does not mean, however, that one does not need the help of a virtuous teacher at all during one's final moments. According to the instruction of senior masters, the manner of dying is described thus: enshrine the image of Amida Buddha on the west wall of the room of the dying. Put him in bed, facing west before the image, and let a virtuous teacher encourage him to utter Nembutsu. This is the desirable way. Nevertheless, the fact is that no one can predict the time and place of his own death. It may suddenly happen on the road. This does not mean, however, that one does not need the help of a virtuous teacher at all during one's final moments. According to the instruction of senior masters, nevertheless, the fact is that no one can predict the time and place of his own death. It may suddenly happen on the road, along a mountain pass, or in a toilet. It is extremely difficult to escape from one's own residual karmic burdens. There are many who may lose their lives by being cut down by a long and short sword. Others may die by fire or drowning due to their residual karma, which is impossible to escape. No matter what kind of death one meets, one who has aspiration for birth in the Pure Land through daily Nembutsu should believe in the welcoming of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara and Bodhisattva Mahastama Prapta, as well as Amida Buddha at the very moment of death. The collection of essentials on attaining birth in the Pure Land, composed by Genshin, states, without regard for time, place, and various karmic relationships, merely recite Nembutsu makes birth Merely reciting Nembutsu makes birth in the Pure Land possible if one desires birth in the Pure Land at the end of one's life. Nembutsu is indeed dependable. Thus I, Honen, have answered the questions you have asked me. Please read them. The following are also replies to the questions posed by you later. 8. Your statement. It may be more meaningful to perform a small number of daily Nembutsu than to sit a large number of daily Nembutsu, and to fail to practice them because it is taught that birth in the Pure Land of ultimate bliss is assured by the utterance of Nembutsu just once is plausible. In the hymns in praise of birth in the Pure Land, Master Shendo said, birth in the Pure Land with certainty will come to pass through 10 repetitions of Nembutsu, or even one. One should not harbor doubt about this teaching even for a moment. His commentary on the Meditation Sutra also instructs, the vocal Nembutsu without cessation for life is called the rightly established practice. Therefore, you should firmly believe in the certain attainment of birth in the Pure Land through 10 repetitions of Nembutsu, or just a single utterance, and devote yourself to accumulating Nembutsu. Master Shando taught, recite the name of Amida Buddha without cessation. Hence, you should continuously recite Nembutsu without interruption throughout your life. It is the desirable sequence of Nembutsu to think of and recite Nembutsu 3 times during a meal. If you always think of and recite Nembutsu, the accumulation of Nembutsu becomes possible without counting the number of Nembutsu up to 60,000 or 100,000 times. One's mind is easily distracted by the things one sees and hears, and Nembutsu becomes difficult to remember and practice. Therefore, setting the number of daily Nembutsu and holding a string of prayer beads helps the remembrance of Nembutsu. If one neglects one's daily practice due to some inconvenience and regretfully says, how shameful I am, I did not recite Nembutsu today, one is bearing Nembutsu in mind. At any rate, if one does not forget Nembutsu, it is referred to as the accumulation of Nembutsu. In addition, it may happen that one comes to practice Nembutsu tomorrow and one cannot perform daily Nembutsu today. But it is not desirable to become lax in one's focus and to put off daily practice until the next day. I would like you to think about this carefully. 9. It is proper to perform religious abstinence and refrain from eating fish or poultry for 7 days after the death of a close relative. But such a custom is not prescribed in any Buddhist scripture. All living beings we eat today might have been our fathers and mothers in the past, therefore we should refrain from eating them as much as possible. Further, since people who have their final moments refrain from impure foods, including wine, fish, chicken, garlic, leeks, onions, those who are mortally ill should also refrain from having them. Nevertheless, those who are not mortally ill, or those who have been suffering from unbearable pain in bed for a long time, are permitted to eat them for the purpose of recovery. At any rate, please try to get as much as possible and concentrate on recuperation in order to practice Nembutsu. Blindly holding fast your life can be an obstacle to the attainment of birth in the Pure Land, to be sure, but you are allowed to have fish and poultry as medical treatment when you are ill. Thus, I, Honen, have written 2 additional answers to questions you have asked me. Please read them carefully. Namu Amida Butsu. Excerpts from the Promise of Amida Buddha, Honen's Path to Bliss.